Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here to tell you a little bit about how diagnostic companies look at the infectious disease crisis. First of all, the CDC plays a critical role in identifying the need for new diagnostics and in many cases developing diagnostics, as you heard, but most laboratory testing for diagnostics will be performed on tests that are produced by diagnostic companies, and the U.S. is a leader in developing new diagnostic tests. The good news is our ability to develop new tests which help us identify infectious diseases has certainly improved greatly. Going back to the HIV epidemic, which began over 30 years ago, in those days it took us over a year before we had reliable diagnostics, or in many cases any diagnostics. Even as recently as the H1N1 epidemic, the time from the development of the identity of the new infectious agents to the development of the diagnostics was still often mentioned in the month times, many months in some cases. Now with the most recent crisis with Zika, we're able to respond much more quickly. The CDC, of course, has taken the lead on that, but some universities have already announced the availability of tests, as well as diagnostic companies have developed tests which are being offered for research use at this time. So we've moved from years to months to weeks on the development side. Certainly that's the good news. The challenge, though, as you heard in the previous talk, is in the development of tests for antibiotic resistance. This is where we still have a lot of work to do. The traditional methods take too long, as you heard. They can take a day or more, depending on the infectious agent. That's really too slow. For a few infectious agents, we have tests which are more rapid and can produce results in 1 hour. But certainly, given the number of infectious agents, the number of resistance mechanisms, many of which are not completely understood, and the need to respond more rapidly, we can expect a lot of development from diagnostic companies in this area in the next decade. So this is the open question, the area that needs more resources and more investment and more development of new technologies. Now, it's important to know that there is no single solution for either identifying an infectious disease or for responding in the case of antibiotic resistance. We have some centralized laboratories like CDC and other reference laboratories. We have state laboratories and even county laboratories. But then we have large hospitals, we have small hospitals, we even have clinics. There is no one single test that's going to work well in all of those environments. So a variety of tests are needed. And of course, when we start talking about testing in the US and outside the US, the testing environment can be very different as well. So this is why there is an opportunity for different diagnostic companies to develop different tests because of the different needs of different testing centers. And also, as you heard, there is testing for IgM, there's testing for DNA or RNA in the case of Zika virus. Different companies have expertise in these different areas. So there is a large need for a range of tests to approach all of these requirements. And again, the requirements are different for every disease. Every disease has different particular problems and characteristics, which leads to my last point, which is what we really need are not just new tests, we need accurate tests. In the case of a new infection, there always is a certain amount of excitement in the press, excitement in the public about the need for a rapid test, the need to get results. On the other hand, we don't want tests that are going to have a lot of false positives, which will then lead people to the conclusion that they have a disease which they may not have. In an environment like we have today, where very few people in the US have been exposed to Zika virus, if we did do a lot of testing, a lot of people might get inaccurate results, and it is typically the diagnostic companies that are responsible for developing tests that deliver the level of specificity, meaning the fewest numbers of false positives, that will give us the kinds of testing we need in a rapidly evolving situation. In order to do that, we need to obtain specimens, both from positive and negative patients in infected areas. This, of course, is always a challenge when a test starts outside the U.S. and then moves to the U.S. That's kind of the situation we're in with Zika today. But as specimens become more available, as information about performance of the existing tests become available, it very quickly becomes no longer, do we have a test, but what is the best test, what is the most accurate test, and what is the test that'll give the American public the best results. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk about Zika virus in that way in the very near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.